Hello, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. Today we're going to talk about all of the books that I read in the month of August. I had a really good reading month. I read 7 books this month and actually walked away, wait for it, with 3 5-star books. That never happens, you guys, like never. But I just picked the cream of the crop this month and I'm very happy about it. I read 2 fantasies, 4 thrillers, and 1 like cozy mystery, I guess I'll say. And yeah, today I'm just gonna share with you my thoughts, what I rated them, and let's just go ahead and dive into it. The first book that I read this month, let's just get it out of the way now so we can talk about all of the good things to come, was The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. This was one of my most anticipated reads of the year. I love Riley Sager as an author, and despite how I feel about some of his books, he is an author that I will continue to pick up from, because regardless of how I feel about them, it's always a time, it's always an adventure. So anywho, The House Across the Lake, I have a whole reading vlog dedicated to reading this. If you want to see it, I will link it in the cards, as well as any other reading vlogs I did this month will also be linked in the description, because I did a few. But anywho, The House Across the Lake, I gave this 1 star, you guys, and I never dish out 1 stars. Usually I will give a 2 star, like that's the lowest I will go. I have to really not enjoy a book to give it a 1 star, and this was it, unfortunately. This just had the thing in thrillers that I don't enjoy the most, without any sort of warning, and I'm not gonna give any spoilers. If you don't know what this book is about, we are following Casey, who is an actress, and she has just lost her husband, and she is on a downward spiral. Her life is falling apart. She is grieving. She's grieving with alcohol, which is just causing, you know, not the greatest of decisions in her life. So her family actually sends her away to their lake house in Vermont, where she's grown up spending summers and whatnot, and they're just like, you know what, take some time away. We think getting out of your day-to-day and the routine of work and everything like that, we think that would be good for you. Take some time, get your shit under control, that kind of thing. And while she is there, she saves her neighbor who is across the lake, who is drowning. Her name is Catherine, who is a model, and she saves Catherine. They start this friendship, and then Catherine goes missing, and Casey is left to wonder what happens, because she witnesses something that's like, is it the husband? Who knows? Is it, you know, a neighbor? She doesn't know what's going on, but she takes it upon herself to try and figure it out. And that sounds like something that would be so up my alley. Sounds like the great start to a thriller. And yet, this book takes a turn, and again, no spoilers, and it is my least favorite thing in a thriller. And it just comes out of left field. I do not mind when this happens if there is something leading up to it that explains why. But instead, we're going along, we're reading, we're like, cool, 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 normal thriller, and then bam, something happens and you're like, okay, that does not make sense in the slightest, and then it just goes downhill from there. If you've read it, you know, and you can understand my feeling towards this. If you haven't, I do still highly suggest picking it up, because you might love what happens in this. You might love that twist, and it might be something that you thoroughly enjoy seeing in thrillers. For me, it is my least favorite thing in thrillers, even when it's done in a great way, but when it's done in a curveball left field way, like this book, I just didn't enjoy it. Will I pick up another Riley Sager? You bet your bottom dollar I will, because I just love the experience. So 1 star for House Across the Lake. It's okay. We can be done with it. She's gonna go on the shelf and, you know, in its rightful place with the rest of the Riley Sagers, and we're just going to move on. I also thoroughly apologize if you can hear the construction noises around me. It is just one of those days. Let's move on to the next book, which is total next end of the spectrum. And that was A Court of Thorns and Roses. Finally dove into this series while I was on vacation. This book actually still smells like sunscreen and the beach, and I just feel like the memories of reading this are going to live within this book now because it smells like vacation. So it's just gonna like transport me back in time to when I read this, and I'm just here for that. This was a 5-star book, 5 out of 5, no questions asked. From the moment I started reading this, I knew it was gonna be a 5-star. It just sucks you in to the world like nothing else I have ever read before. Now, I am newer to fantasy. I have, you know, dabbled in some fantasy before, but never really gotten into like an entire series like this other than Harry Potter and the Hunger Games, but I don't think that's really, can you consider that fantasy? I don't know. If it is, I've also read the Hunger Games, but nothing like this before, because I'm always afraid that I'm not going to understand the world or the magic system or whatever's happening. But this book and this series explains things out so well, and it is so thought out and easy to understand, and it explains why certain things are happening and why things are in the world that they are, and I just love it. I cannot sing praises for this enough. And if you don't know what this book and what this series is about, this book in particular starts off with our main character, Feyre. And she is a mortal, she's a human, and she is the one who takes care of her family. So she goes out and hunts and does all of that for them. And one day they are like really needing to get some food. So she goes out hunting and she comes across a wolf and she shoots it. Now, there's the possibility that this wolf is not actually a wolf and it's a fairy, a high fae. But she takes the chance because it looks and appears like a wolf. She shoots it, brings it back, you know, the whole shebang. And then the next evening, she gets a knock on her door, and it's from a fairy. And it's like, hey, you shot one of us. You need to come with me or you die. And she's like, excuse me, what? It's like, you have the choice. You can either die right here, a miserable death, or you can come with me and live in my world and live with me until the end of time. And she's like, well, I don't want to die and I want my family to survive, so I'm going to go ahead and go with you. And she goes into this world, and from there, things start to happen. And the story unravels, and it is beautiful, it is heartbreaking, it is action-packed, it is devastating. You fall in love with the characters. She goes into what's called the Spring Court, and you meet Tamlin, who is the High Fae of that court. You meet his right-hand man, Lucien, who is just one of my favorite characters. He's so sarcastic, and him and Feyre just have this banter that goes back and forth, and I just love them. And then I'm not going to spoil the rest of the story for you, but oh my god, from beginning to end, I could not put this book down. I am obsessed. I'm already into the next in the series. I haven't finished it yet, which is why it's not included in this video, but I cannot get enough, and I just want to read and read and read, and I know the series isn't even over yet, so it just gets me that excited that like I'm diving into it now, because I will be able to be with these series as the ending unfolds, because I believe there's still 2 more books in the series. I believe there's 5 out now, and I think there's 2 more to go, maybe more than that, I don't know. So if you haven't gotten on the Court of Thorns and Roses train yet, do it now so we can enjoy this together. But oh my god, 5 out of 5 stars. Loved it, loved it, loved it, loved it. You will love it too. I did a reading vlog for that book as well, and included in that reading vlog was my next read, which was Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. He is the same author as House in the Cerulean Sea, which I actually read last year on vacation and loved it. So I figured, you know what, I'm gonna give this one a whirl. It has House in the Cerulean Sea vibes. He just is such an amazing fantasy, wholesome writer. I just love his stories because they just make you feel something. They make you feel warm and fuzzy and like you are getting a perfectly nice hug wrapped around you, and I just love it. So this was a 5 out of 5 stars. This was another 5-star read for me this month. Like I said, I had a really good reading month, but I just loved this. This book is so cute and it is so funny. We follow the main character, Wallace, who is he's a pretentious prick. Let's just put it that way. He's like what you think of when you think of like the worst person on the earth. Like he just thinks that he's entitled to everything. He's so mean to everyone and just the worst of the worst. And Wallace dies like pretty instantly at the beginning of the book, and that's not a spoiler. It's in the synopsis. But he dies, and at his funeral, he is at his funeral and he is hella confused on why he's able to see what's happening. He doesn't know if he's dead or alive or what have you. And then a Reaper comes along whose name is May, and she's like a young-hearted, she's kind of like, I wouldn't say valley girl, but she has that like literally Wallace, like literally. So she comes along and is like, hey, I'm here to take you to the next stage. And he's like, excuse me, what? And she's like, you're dead. And he's like, okay. And they move on to the next phase, which is actually a little tea house. And the story goes off from there. But him and May together, chef's kiss partner, they are complete opposites, but them together is so funny. Like the banter between the two of them is hilarious. May, my kind of gal. She just like tells it like it is, just does not take any shits from him, and he trying to kind of figure things out and a little bit lost, but also holding on to like his prick personality, and they are just together so funny, and the story unfolds in a beautiful way. It's a gorgeous story about life and death and who you are now and the choices that you make and can you change. It just is absolutely gorgeous. It's so cute, so funny, and I highly, highly, highly recommend this, especially if you loved House in the Cerulean Sea. A lot of people are afraid that it's not going to live up to the hype, and while it is not the same story, it has similar vibes, and you will love it. I cried at the end, which I was not expecting whatsoever, but it did make me cry, and it was just a grand old time. Also, the audiobook to this is amazing. He does different voices for the different characters, and it is so good. So either way, whether you read this physically or with the audiobook, you will have an amazing time. The next book that I read was a library book, so I don't actually have the physical copy here, but it's Things We Do in the Dark by Jennifer Hillier. This was for the book troop, which is Gabby Reed's book club for the month, and this book follows our main character, Paris, who is married to a famous comedian, and at the very start of the book, it opens up with the police there. She's covered in blood, and her husband is dead in the bathroom. And that's how the book opens up, and let me tell you, this book has one of the best first lines I've ever read. I was like soaking it in so fast, like hooked from the very start. But this book also has a dual kind of storyline going on. It also follows a storyline of a serial killer in Canada named Ruby, and kind of how she knows Paris, but Paris isn't really her real identity. So it just kind of follows the twists and turns of that. And this was a 2-star for me. I really loved the first part. I was gripped in from the beginning, which is the kind of how things are unfolding with Paris and her dead husband, and like she's, you know, a suspect and all of that. That part, so gripping. And then the story starts to shift and it goes in a way that I just like lost interest so quickly. I think that there was just a lot of unnecessary clutter in the book, and this could have been well told in a different way. And instead of it really being like a thriller, which they tried to make it a thriller, but the reveal was like hella obvious. It also just kind of turned into more of a story of Paris's life and that kind of thing. So it wasn't really like thrilling. There were some heartbreaking things, and I would definitely look up trigger warnings for this book before you dive into it, because there was a lot of talk of sexual assault and murder and that kind of thing. So it almost felt like a true story in sorts. It was almost like a podcast kind of unfolding in that way. And I just didn't love the way that it went. I think that it was a gripping story, but I didn't like how it was told, and I just lost interest. I would have loved it if it had stayed on the point of view of like this, you know, a famous husband, the wife is suspected, and that kind of thing, because that was very gripping from the start. And even though we sometimes see that a lot in thrillers, I just think that it could have been done really well, but instead it took this turn, and for me it just wasn't it. I loved parts of it. I think that parts of it were really well done, but overall it was just a 2-star. It fell flat. It just wasn't for me. Coming off the heels of that, I was like, I am just feeling a little bit of coziness in my life, so I dove into A Curious Beginning. This is part of the Veronica Speedwell series. It is the first in the series. Oh my god, this was so fun. If you love anything like Sherlock Holmes and like cozy crimes, you will love this. This was a grand old time. This book follows Veronica, and at the very start of the book, she is at a funeral for her aunt who just passed away, and coming home from the funeral, she walks into her house, there's an intruder in there, and she is almost kidnapped until someone comes along and saves her, and then they go to London because he's like, hey yo, Veronica, you're in danger. You need to get out of here right away. And Veronica's stubborn, and she is an independent woman, which we love to see. And she is, did I say this is set in the 1800s, by the way? So like, you know, women are expected to be a certain way and to live a certain life, and she's like, that is not for me. I'm gonna go out in the world. I want to adventure. Now that I don't have anyone to take care of, because her aunts were very sick and she was taking care of them, she's like, I'm gonna go off and do my thing and like be with all of the men that I want to be with. And she's here for it. But this intruder comes, she's in danger, she gets whisked away to save her life, and she gets put into the care of a man named Stoker, who is like broody, the broodiest of broods. He's just like in his ways, and he's just doing it as a favor to his friend. He's like, hey, Stoker, can you look after her, please? You know, while we try to figure out what's happening. And then the dude that saved her dies, and they are left to figure out what is happening. They're both people of interest in this murder, and so they take off and they have to try to hide and take cover while also try to unravel this mystery of like, why is she in danger? Why did he think she was in danger? And who murdered him? And it is just so fun. Her and Stoker have the best of relationships. They just bicker back and forth like an old married couple, but they aren't romantic yet. It's just a slow burn. I'm not gonna spoil it, but it is a slow burn. Everything in this book is kind of a slow burn. It unravels the mystery throughout, and it turns a lot into like Veronica and her life, and it is just a grand old time. It's fun. listening to them bicker is a good time. The mystery is fun. It's a very Sherlock Holmes vibes, like I said, as they try to unravel what is going on. And I just had a blast. This was a 5 out of 5 stars. I am so excited to dive more into the series. One, because I just think it's fun to like follow adventures like that, but also Stoker. Stoker, Stoker, Stoker. Need I say more? I don't. That was it. 5 out of 5 stars. Highly recommend if you're looking for a cozy mystery. This is it. Start the series. You will not regret it. The next book I actually listened to on audio. I always like to have an audiobook in the mix to like mix things up. Sometimes I will listen to the audiobook and read along with the physical book. This one, I just listened to the audiobook. It was so short. I think it was only 4 hours long. And it's I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. I've been wanting to read this book for a while because everyone says it is a wild time, that you don't really understand what's going on, and that it's just a trip. And I couldn't agree more. Like, what the frick did I just read / listen to? But also loved it. I thought it was a good old time. The audiobook did a great job. It was creepy, unsettling, anxiety ridden. You're like, what is going on? And then when the reveal happens, I know a lot of people have different takes on what happens, and I'm not going to spoil it. So if you I just suggest either reading it or listening to it. Like I said, it was only 4-hour audiobook, so super quick. But the twist is definitely something to think about. I know everyone has their own take. I definitely have my own perception of what was going on and how everything kind of came about, but that's what I love about this book. It's such a conversation starter, and people who have read it can kind of bounce ideas back and forth to each other and be like, no, actually, I think this is what's going on. No, I actually think this is what's going on. And if you look at the reviews on Goodreads, that conversation goes and goes and goes and goes, and I just love books like this. I gave this book 4 stars. I thought it was great. I had a good time while I was listening to it. Like I said, it was creepy and unsettling, anxiety inducing, but also just like so engaging and thought-provoking, and I love books like that. And the last book that I read this month was So Happy For You by Celia Lasky. This is a over-the-top thriller. If you go into this thinking that it's going to be like any other thriller, you are going to be sadly disappointed. But if you go into this thinking it's going to be like Bridesmaids with murder, you are going to have a great time. And I knew that going into it, so I wanted to put it out there for you. This is not like the most chilling, thrilling kind of book. This is over the top, dramatic Bridesmaids with murder. And it was great time. I had a wonderful experience reading this book. It is also just explores the dynamics of friendship. We are following Robin, who is a feminist to the core, and like her opinions, her way or the highway. Like if someone else disagrees with her, she is combative. She is going to talk and talk and talk until that person comes around. And if that person doesn't come around, Lord help them. So she's one of those. And her best friend Ellie, growing up, they've kind of estranged from each other, and Ellie is getting married and asks Robin to be the maid of honor. So the story kind of takes off from there. Also, Robin does not like the fiance, like whatsoever. But it's just an exploration of friendship because, like I said, they've been estranged. They're coming back together for this like huge life event. And anyone who has been through like a strained friendship or a friend breakup of sorts will relate to this story so hard. Oh my God, it's like uncanny. I was like, yep. But it's interesting because she does end up being the maid of honor, so then it's just like this whole unwinding wedding drama and what's gonna happen, and the story takes a turn, and it is dramatic, and it is over the top, like I said, but so fun. So if you go into this thinking that it's just gonna be like a lighthearted, fun time, you will really enjoy it. I gave this book 4 stars. Like I said, I just had a blast. It was just the perfect, like, in-between kind of thriller. It wasn't too serious. It just was all about having fun, navigating this friendship, and it was just great. I had a grand old time. And those are all the books that I read for the month of August. I would love to know if you have read any of these, what your thoughts were, and I also would love to know in the comments what your favorite book was that you read this month, and what's one book that you are planning to read for the month of September. I already have my TBR picked out. I am so excited. I cannot wait to dive more into like some moody, fallish kind of books. I feel like September is the perfect like transitional month, and I am so excited. Anywho, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you did. Don't forget to subscribe while you are here. Turn on the bell so you never miss a video. I do mindful living content on Tuesdays, reading content on Saturdays, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!
With you and I, the future is bright.